Alright, so me and a subscriber had got on a conversation, and he has this engine, doesn't have enough power. He was wondering about superchargers, what exactly is going on, what happens. We eventually branched off the fuel, so I'm making this video for him. And I'm basically going to explain what the different fuels are, what they mean, and how they affect you. So, these numbers are based off of Quick Trip. You pull up to your gas station, it might be slightly different. I live in Wisconsin. Quick Trip is the go-to gas station, so that's what these numbers are based off of. When you pull up to the pump, you're going to see 87, 88, 91, E85, and diesel. First thing you need to know, don't put diesel in the gas engine, or vice versa. Good? Alright. Most of you already have that down pat, but what exactly does this mean? And can you get more power by going up in the numbers? Now, going from 87 to 88, you're actually going to lose power. Going from 87 or 88 to 91, you're going to pick up a little power. And that's because of the content of ethanol in there. And ethanol is its own animal. We are going to cover it a little bit more in depth with E85, because E85 means it's 85% ethanol. But first, we need to discuss what these numbers are actually for. That is the octane in the fuel, and it will allow you to run different compression ratios. Now, every single engine is going to be a little bit different. Say, for example, I have engine A that doesn't overknock with 87 octane in it, and then I have the exact same engine with the same compression because it's a little bit different. Maybe they have cast iron heads, maybe they're running a little bit more advanced spark. Now that engine knocks. What knocking is as the piston's coming up in the cylinder, before the spark even hits, the gas flash ignites, or you can have it to where it burns on one side, burns on the other. It's just bad news. You'll damage your engine, not good at all. You want it so it doesn't start burning until the moment the spark hits, because that's where you've timed it, that's where you set everything up so it runs like a perfect machine. If it burns premature, your piston's still going up and it's not ready, it's still trying to go up, but the gas is still trying to push it down. That's bad news bears right there. You don't want that. But generally, so 87, ballparking it, again, every engine's going to be different. You can run about 9.3 to 1. 88, somewhere around 10 to 1. 91, about 11.5 is where she'll max out. And again, I don't mean to stress this enough because I don't want you to use this as like a go-to because it's different for every engine. But that's the ballpark. If your engine's built correctly, you have aluminum heads on there, that's about what you can run. Now, why do you get more power with 91? That's because the percentage of ethanol in there. For 87, you have 10% ethanol. For 88, you have 15% ethanol. There's only so much power you can wring out of a gallon of gas. Yeah, some engines can do it slightly more efficient and get slightly more power, but when you add up all the gas going in there, it's roughly about the same. Again, there's slight efficiency differences from engine to engine, but generally, that's all you can get is so much power out of each gallon of gas. Ethanol has about 20, this is E85, I couldn't find straight ethanol to get the numbers on that, but on E85 that's 85% ethanol, it's 27% less power. So we're just going to go with 27%. So if 10% of this is ethanol, so 10% of this gas has 27% less power, and this has no ethanol in it, well, that's how you're going to pick up a little bit of power. Is that enough to really make a difference? Probably not. You're probably not going to notice. But on a dyno, you might be able to pick it up. Oh, I'm getting more power with 91. And that's why, because there's no ethanol in there. Ethanol has some bad side effects, like it doesn't store very well. It breaks down a little bit quicker. 91 has a higher, longer shelf life. So that's a really good thing. But what they do to keep this fuel cheaper is they add ethanol in there to get octane. They used to add lead in gas, but the EPA shut that down for good reason. You know, the last thing you want is a bunch of lead floating around in the air because that's a heavy metal. Our bodies can't get rid of it. It's toxic to us. It made gas more expensive as soon as they took the lead out. To make gas cheap again, they started putting ethanol in there to get the octane because ethanol has a higher percent of octane. Like if you strip the ethanol out of this, and you can do it with water, the octane numbers are going to drop way down. So your 87 might not even be able to handle like your basic like 8 to 1 compression. I don't know, I've never stripped it out and tested it, but that's what it's for. It's to give you octane in a cheap way. However, when they started adding ethanol to fuel, the general average across America, you got about 10% less gas mileage. That means also you got about 10% less power. And that is the reason why. Now, E85, where it shines is you can run 13-to-1 compression. So, for example, say I have a factory car. I don't change anything about it. You know what? We will change something. We'll say that we change the injectors so it puts in enough fuel to handle ethanol E85, which I'm going to talk about why you got to add more fuel in a second here. We'll pretend we put in big enough injectors so where it runs normal, just like my gasoline engine. I might pick up a little bit of power, but over the cost of what I'm going to lose in fuel mileage, because I'm going to lose about 27% power, and I'm going to lose about 27% fuel mileage. But I can run more in there, because instead of a 14.7 to 1 air-fuel ratio, I can run a 9.733 to 1. That means I can fit more fuel inside the cylinder, making up the difference of the 27% power loss. However, adding that fuel in there, I'm going to get about 27% less fuel mileage. Now, that's roughing it. Again, we're not going to get crazy with the math. It probably doesn't work out to that, but just to make it understandable. So if I took a factory car and I made it so I'm putting in roughly, whatever the difference is in fuel, I will pick up a little bit of power. Is it enough to make a difference? No. And I feel like over the period of 100,000 miles, the money you would have spent on that extra E85, you'd have been better off just doing some sort of power modification. I don't recommend that unless you have a forced induction engine. You'll see this a lot with Hellcats. Because it can handle more compression, you can run more boost on it. Yeah, your fuel mileage is just going to... However, running that more boost, if your only goal is horsepower, that is how you do it. You switch to E85, you crank the boost up because it can handle a lot more. Because remember, 91, which is what you get at the pump, is 11.5 to 1. That's the max you can run. This also comes out to boost, but boost is a little bit different. Again, there's just so many variables in figuring out the max amount of boost, but you can, in fact, run more boost. So, with like a Hellcat, you can run bigger injectors, overdrive that supercharger a little bit more, get more boost out of it, so you're running more fuel under higher boost. You can get like 1,000 horsepower by switching to E85 and doing all the proper modifications. I would do it myself because I'd probably break the bottom half of the engine because it's rated for 707. That's a massive difference from 1,000. So you're putting the engine on under way more stresses. You're likely to break something. So now we get into diesel. Diesel is one of the only fuels that actually contains more BTU power than gasoline. You're looking at about 20 to 30% more power. You also get about 20 to 30% more fuel mileage, and that's why. Because 1 gallon of diesel holds about 20 to 30% more power than 1 gallon of gasoline. So you will get more power in a diesel engine. Diesels are a little bit weird. Their compression is all over the place. Like trying to pin down a number of what diesel can actually handle, I couldn't find it because they don't. So with a gas engine, the air and fuel come in at once. It goes through your intake stroke, then you have your power stroke. A diesel, it doesn't shoot the fuel in until it's already under compression. So your injector tells it basically when it's going to fire. So you run really high compression, have a hot air temperature, and then right when you want the piston to start going down, you hit it with the fuel, and then you have your explosion. Where gas and all the rest of the ones I'm going to talk about, the fuel's already in there. So it's got to be able to handle the pressure from the compression. Diesel doesn't have that problem, so you can run stupid high compression like 14, 16 to 1, not a problem whatsoever. Alright, now that we understand the basic limitations of engines and it comes down to compression and air-fuel ratio, now is when things are going to get interesting. Now we're going to talk about blowers, nitromethane, and nitrous oxide. So, first things first. We know that the cylinder has to have an air-fuel ratio of 14.7 to 1 with gasoline. What's going on here is the atmosphere, the stuff we're breathing in right now, it's only 21% oxygen. Not to mention, the engine is going to feed off of atmospheric pressure, which is 14.7 pounds. So what that means is when your intake valve opens up, it's feeding with the pressure of 14.7 pounds. The air that fills in the cylinder is only 21% oxygen. So out of that 21%, let's say this is the 21% line right here. Hypothetically speaking, we fill the whole thing up. Well, if this is 21%, that means only 1% of fuel can go in there, otherwise you're going to be in a rich situation and it's not going to run properly. You're not going to get as much power. So that is your limited factor. Not to mention, the less you can squeeze this, because of these fuels right here, is the less bang you're going to get, the less efficiently it's going to burn. The more you can force it down, the bigger bang you're going to get, the more efficiently it's going to burn, the better it's going to atomize. But you got to run higher compressions to be able to do that. So how do we get over this hurdle right here? Because this is a big frickin' hurdle. Well, the first way to do it is with a supercharger. So this is a cubic foot of air, each one of these. Each one of these contain 21% oxygen. What you do is you smash them together. Use a supercharger that compresses it all down into a single cubic foot of air, so this is no longer 21%. It can be much higher. And then if you got multiple cubic feet of air, yes, the percent is still there, but these 4 cubic feet of air are smashed down into this 1 cubic foot of air. So we got this little space here, which is 21%, this 21%, this 21%, this 21%. You see where I'm going with this? So okay, now we can fill the cylinder up to a lot more higher oxygen level. So that means we can add more fuel. However, we are still limited by the static compression combined with the boost to not pre-detonate. Well, how do we get over that hurdle? Because now we figured out a way to get more air in there, so now we can put more fuel in there, but we're still limited by compression. Well, the first way, like I was saying earlier, is go with E85, because it can handle 13 to 1. So we can even pack more air in there. Not to mention, you only have to have a 9.733 to 1 air-fuel ratio. That means for 1 molecule of fuel, you only got to have 9.7 of oxygen, where with gasoline, 1 molecule of fuel, you got to have 14.7. So that's how you make the really, really big power on E85, and that's with boost. If you got boost going for you, you're making a lot of power. Again, back to the Hellcat example. Okay, so now we're at 9.733 to 1 and 13 to 1. This is the next hurdle we want to overcome. Because remember, this makes 27% less power, but because of how much ridiculously more fuel you can fit in your cylinder, yeah, your gas mileage is going to shit out, but you're going to make a whole lot more power. So say this under fuel, naturally aspirated is only capable of 100 horse. You throw boost on there, now you could, I'm making up numbers, now you could be capable of like 120 horse. Now you switch to E85, now you could be capable of like 200 horse. So, that being said, what if we want to get even more? Like, what if we want to get exponentially more horsepower? How do we do that? This is where nitromethane comes in. You're going to switch fuels. What nitromethane is made of is CH3 and NO2. What matters here is the O2. The nitromethane brings its own oxygen to the party. So what that means is you only have to run a 1.7 to 1 air-fuel ratio. That's damn near a 1 to 1 air-fuel ratio. Yeah, it's closer to 2 to 1, but that's not the point. From 14.7 to 1 to 1.7 to 1. So now let's pretend that, okay, so this right here is 21% oxygen. This was the old amount of fuel that we could put in here. Well, now we can put damn near the same amount of fuel in there as spaces and oxygen. You throw a blower on here, oh my God, the sky is the limit. In almost every case scenario, you'll get 2.3 times more power. So say you maxed out your limit on gasoline, like you're at the maximum amount of boost you can run without running pre-detonation, you're already running 91 octane, and let's say you have 100 horse. You will instantly double, because of the more fuel you can put in there, to 230 horse. That's insane. Now juice up that boost level, and you're just blowing past the 2.3. you're making huge amount of power, which is crazy because nitromethane actually has 4 times less power contained in a single gallon of fuel over gasoline. But the ability to fit so much more in there, running the same boost level on the same cylinder with the same static compression, just increasing the amount of fuel, 2.3 is your gain. So after you increase the boost and bring the static compression up and everything else, and you just add more and more and more, because it basically turns into a goldfish then, and I truly mean that, you can literally add more until you blow the head off. Because eventually you're going to start running into hydrolock because you can fit so much fuel in there, and as we know, a fluid can't compress. So a piston comes up and it's not all the way up, but it's completely filled with fluid. Pow! There goes your cylinder head. Just blows it right off the engine, which is a huge problem when you're playing with nitro. I've never played with it myself, but that's what all the drag racers say. The nitromethane, the static compression that it's able to run without boost, I'm seeing quotes of 16-to-1 is what they're running on the track. To give you an idea of what it can handle with boost, because remember, the boost is how much air you're pushing in there. The Pro Street or whatever, what would it be, I think it's Pro Street. They're running a static compression of 7-to-1 with 65 pounds of boost. What you typically see on the street is between like anywhere from 5 to 20. That's typically what your street vehicles operate in. Like Hellcats, I think a Hellcat's got 14 pounds of boost. 65 PSI of boost. You know how much oxygen you're filling into that cylinder and then dumping fuel on top of it? That's insane. The power numbers just don't even compute in my head. Like, that's a lot of fuel. And that's why they run into hydrolock. They just pump so much air in there that when they put the fuel in there, it's literally like pushed tight against the cylinder head, and that's the balance they're trying to run. Any more fuel and they blow the cylinder head off. If something goes wrong and they don't calculate things right, they blow the cylinder head off. But again, it contains 4 times less power. So let's say they put out a factory car that runs off of nitromethane, you're going to get 4 times less fuel mileage. So if it got 4 miles to the gallon before, now you're getting 1. But that's not without increase. That's before you like throw a bunch of boost at it and then just dump a whole bunch more fuel in it. You're practically taking a 5-gallon bucket in front of each cylinder and saying go, and everybody dumps that once. That's how quickly it burns fuel. From what I understand, a pro dragster burns, I think it's 15 gallons in a quarter mile. So instead of getting 18 miles to the gallon, you're getting 15 gallons to a quarter mile. That's just crazy and mind-blowing. Okay, so we got that covered. That's how we get over the hurdle of there. What if you don't want to run a blower, but you just want more power? Again, you still have the hurdle of 14.7-to-1 air-fuel ratio. You need to add more oxygen. Unfortunately, you can't just crack an oxygen bottle like a scuba diving tank into your intake because it's so volatile that it could literally detonate the fuel right inside your intake. So how do you get over that? That's nitrous oxide. What you're looking at here is NO2. The O2 is a major power gainer. You do get some from N. It does happen. But it's mostly from O2. Because you're adding so much more oxygen in there, and a lot of oxygen, it's kind of like the same effect as nitromethane, just not quite on that scale. Because you can't go over your maximum compression ratios. If somehow this could magically make it so you could go over those, then you'd really be in business. But basically, so the O2 gets in there, and now you can just run a whole bunch of fuel. Like theoretically speaking, if somehow you could get rid of these ceilings on compression ratios, you could get the same effect as nitromethane. But again, you can't. You're still limited by that. So therefore, you can only add so much fuel in there. But you can literally add nitrous and fuel into your engine until it just blows apart because you've just made so much power. That's how nitrous works. And that's the gist of what to expect when you go to the pump, what those different fuels mean, what the different fuels do, how you actually gain power from the different fuels. So I hope this video was educational to you. If it was and you'd like to help support the channel, don't forget to subscribe.